In a quiet section of Davao City in the southern Philippines lies Huna Subdivision, one of the more exclusive subdivisions in the city. Huna has long been considered a playground of the Ampatuan clan, one of the most influential clans in central Mindanao, whose patriarch, Andal Ampatuan Sr., now stands accused of the murder of 58 people in what is now known as the Maguindanao Massacre. Records from the Davao City Assessor's Office show that the Ampatuans have at least 15 properties in this community alone. These are far from your ordinary properties. One house along Kasuy Street stands out among the rest. This mansion belongs to Andal Ampatuan Sr. himself. It occupies one whole block, around 4,000 square meters. The perimeter wall itself is said to cost several million pesos already. The guard houses that stand over every corner are bigger than your average house.
Kagaya namin na po, sir, isang block, wala na yan. Isang bahay na yan.
Isang bahay lang?
Isang bahay yung isang block yata. 100,000.
There are solar panels on the roof, reportedly to heat the indoor swimming pool inside. But the mansion, for all its grandeur, was never finished. What you see is not even half of the property. This is the part left unfinished. The perimeter wall is unpainted, but it is clearly of the same design. Construction stalled in the wake of the 2009 Maguindanao Massacre, after Andal Ampatuan Sr. and his sons were jailed and charged with multiple murder. Now the property is padlocked, and the gates bear the graffiti of angry Mindanaoans. This property is only one of many properties owned by the family of Andal Ampatuan Sr. A Manila court has identified and frozen 161 properties listed in the family's name. In 2011, the Anti-Money Laundering Council, or the AMLAC, filed a civil forfeiture case against the Ampatuan clan. The AMLAC wants to seize the Ampatuan assets on the belief that the assets were illegally acquired using government funds. The courts handed down the freeze order to make sure that the assets are not dissipated while the case is pending before the courts. This means the properties may not be sold or transferred while the case grinds on. But investigation by the PCIJ and Minda News reveals that the freeze order may have come a little too late. 2 weeks before the freeze order was imposed, the land titles of 8 pieces of real property belonging to Andal Ampatuan Jr. were transferred to somebody else. Transfer Certificate of Title number 410739 covers 600 square meters. TCT 430740 and 741 also cover 600 square meters. TCT 445458, 459, and 460 cover 555 square meters. And TCT 444571 cover 600 square meters. All of these titles are for lands owned by Andal Jr. in Huna Subdivision. There is one more property in nearby Matina Crossing, covering 783 square meters under TCT 416373. Certified through copies of the land titles acquired by the PCIJ show that almost all the properties were transferred in just one day. May 13, 2011 for the 7 properties in Huna Subdivision and May 19, 2011 for the one in Matina Crossing. It was more than 2 weeks after the titles were transferred when the AMLAC asked the Court of Appeals for a freeze order. The court handed down the freeze order on June 6, 2011. The order still included the 8 properties that Andal Jr. had sold off. By then, it was already too late. But there is one more issue that complicates the sale. The buyer of the 8 properties happens to be Andal Jr.'s own lawyer. The PCIJ and Minda News secured copies of the new titles of the 8 properties under the name of Arnel C. Manaloto from Santo Entierro Street in Angeles City. Manaloto is one of many lawyers of Andal Jr. in his other court cases in Manila and Maguindanao. He is reported to be a frequent visitor of Andal Jr. in his jail cell and has on several occasions attended the trial of the multiple murder case, even though he supposedly is not a member of the defense panel. Last year, Manaloto also figured prominently in a confrontation with Maguindanao Governor Esmael Mangudadatu. Mangudadatu had insisted on conducting a surprise inspection of the jail cell of Andal Jr., but was blocked by Manaloto. Law experts say that the sale may be problematic, given that the buyer is the lawyer of the accused and the properties were to have been the target of a government seizure.
The general principle there is the lawyer should not be materially or pecuniarily or in any way interested in property that is owned by the client, or where the client has an interest in, that is subject of the litigation. No? So in principle, hindi dapat bilhin, ibenta, maging broker, no?
Attorney Teddy Te of the University of the Philippines College of Law says the sale may give the appearance of an attempt by the client to hide his properties under the name of his lawyer, especially since the case involves forfeiture of the properties.
It could be a possible source of conflict of interest. It could also be the other way, a possible source of collusion, meaning possible source of fraud. No? Because madaling gawin kasi ng abogado ng kliyente kung alam ng abogado na may dapat silang itago at sabihin ng kliyente, lipat ko na lang sa'yo para wala na sa akin, diba? At kung pumayag yung abogado, then that's problematic because they now share the same interest. There's no conflict of interest. They now share the same interest, and the interest is fraudulent, meaning that dapat papel na abogado is to say, uy, hindi ko pwedeng gawin yan kasi bawal sa amin. At pag ginawa mo yan, ang effect niyan hindi na pwedeng habulin yung property. But if the lawyer agrees and the property is transferred to him, and therefore now there's no conflict because they now have the same interest, which is to keep the property away, then yes, that could be a source of action and source of discipline as well.
Families of the victims of the Maguindanao Massacre are also questioning the sale.
Aside from the Code of Professional Responsibility, which governs the conduct of the lawyers, I just cannot remember the exact provision under the Civil Code that actually says sales cannot take place between a lawyer and a client when it involves a piece of property that is being contested, let's say in a judicial proceeding. So there is a prohibition under the Civil Code, aside from the prohibition, the generic provision that's found under the Code of Professional Responsibility.
Attorney Prima Quinsayas is the legal counsel of the Freedom Fund for Filipino Journalists, a group that provides legal and financial support to families of journalists who have been murdered. Quinsayas says families of victims of the massacre have long worried that the Ampatuan assets were slowly being dissipated as the case drags on in court.
Early 2010, there were relatives saying that, attorney, nabalitaan namin parang yung sasakyan ni na Ampatuan parang binenta na sa ganito. And I'll tell them, do you have proof? Hindi, attorney, nababalitaan lang namin, attorney. So, they have raised those concerns as early as 2010.
It is for this reason that the families have been asking the courts to move faster in both the civil and criminal cases against the Ampatuans.
And the last time it was raised was, I think, last year when some were saying, attorney, kung makonvict sila, attorney, would they still have properties? Kasi baka binibenta na o nililipat na sa pangalan ng iba. They have actually raised that concern with me. That's why I think a while ago when we were discussing their willingness to actually consider accepting the offer of compromise or settlement, that's one of the concerns they raised, na baka after 3, 4, 5 years, even if we do get a conviction and the judge awards damages, the decision cannot actually be executed because there is nothing, no property to be used to pay the, let's say, the civil damages that were awarded by the court.
The PCIJ tried several times to get an interview with Attorney Manaloto. At first, we looked for him in the address listed in his new title, 46B Santo Entierro Street in Angeles City. But Attorney Manaloto had already transferred offices. We found his new office here, along Pandan Street, a few kilometers away. Manaloto's secretary, however, said the lawyer was not in, even as his clients waited for him in the foyer. After a while, the clients left, saying their appointments were cancelled because of our presence. The PCIJ sought an appointment with Manaloto through his secretary to no avail. We then asked Attorney Siegfried Fortun, lead counsel of the Ampatuans, what role Manaloto played in the Ampatuans' defense. In an email message, Fortun confirmed that Manaloto is Andal Jr.'s lawyer in some of his cases in Maguindanao. Manaloto also lawyers for Andal Jr.'s wife, Rechal. Fortun added that Manaloto is not part of the Ampatuan defense team in the murder trial. Fortun said that the last time he saw Manaloto was during Manaloto's wedding in Pampanga earlier this year. By all indications, Manaloto is a relatively young lawyer. In an online listing of lawyers, Manaloto is recorded to have become a member of the Philippine Bar only in 2005. He had a stint as the appointment secretary of former Pampanga Governor Ed Panlilio before becoming a lawyer for the Ampatuans. Attorney Tez says it would be interesting to see how the young Manaloto could buy 8 properties in Davao City after practicing law for only 7 years.
Then the second thing that's also going to be problematic there is, of course, these are huge tracts of land. These are many parcels of property, and the question of how he was able to get enough income to buy those properties, nang sabay-sabay, because of course there will be a paper trail. There will be taxes that need to be paid. There will be documents that need to be filed, and these have to be the transfers have to be processed. So those become problematic.
In each of the memoranda of encumbrance that the PCIJ secured from the new land titles, Manaloto is recorded to have paid 20 million to Andal Jr. What is not clear is whether Manaloto paid 20 million for each of the 8 properties, or if he paid 20 million for all 8 in a package deal. If it was a package deal, the average price for each property would be a staggeringly low 2.5 million pesos each. We were able to find one of the properties sold by Andal Jr. to Manaloto. This property along 638 Kasoy Street in Davao City is just a block away from the grand mansion of his father Andal Sr. and his brother Zaldi. The property is huge and contains several large structures inside. The caretaker of the house confirmed that the property is now owned by Manaloto.
Ay, ma'am, ito po yung 638. 638. Nandyan si Atty. Manaloto?
Wala po si dito.
Pero dito ang bahay niya?
Dito.
Okay.
Although the lawyer seldom visits. The caretaker also confirmed that the property was acquired sometime last year.
Gano'n pupunta naman siya dito?
Minsan-minsan po.
Saan pupunta siya rito? Okay. Kasi hinahanap namin, may lang kami mga hinahanap kasama sa aming bahay niyo. Kailan kaya siya babalik?
Hindi ko lang alam kung kailan kasi nag-surprise naman siya pumupunta dito, sir.
Surprise lang?
Opo.
Kailan pa niya pag-ari? Kailan pa niya pag-ari?
Last year po.
Further investigation by the PCIJ showed that Manaloto is involved with 2 other companies, both of which were set up after the sale of the properties to the young lawyer. 8 Star Farms was formed in September 2011 with a paid-up capital of only 62,500 pesos. 8 Bullet Security Agency was formed only in August this year, with only 500,000 pesos in the bank, according to the agency's treasurer, who is Manaloto himself. The PCIJ tried to get an interview with the AMLAC on how the Ampatuans were able to beat them to the draw. AMLAC officials refused to talk to us, saying their operations were confidential. But clearly, the government was caught by surprise when the Ampatuans sold the properties. According to the Land Registration Authority, they were obliged to process the sale because the freeze order came too late.
Kasi yung intention naman, hindi naman sa RD side but on the parties, on the owner, on the buyer, kung kumpleto naman yung papeles kahit ba public record na merong case involving the forfeiture, at the time the transaction was entered in the registry, wala naman siyang notice, yung Register of Deeds na meron ng order freezing the property. It becomes the ministerial duty of the Register of Deeds to process the transaction.
In the end, the questions remain. How were the Ampatuans able to beat government to the punch? Are there more properties that have been sold off? And if government and the families are able to secure convictions, how much of the fabled Ampatuan properties would still be in their name?
If there's already a freeze order, I think that's judicial notice to all government agencies connected. So let's say if we're talking about accounts, banks should be informed that these certain accounts under the certain names have been frozen and no transaction whatsoever can be entertained. And in the case of property, I would be assuming the Registry of Deeds should know, not wait for someone to give them, remind them na, oops, under judicial scrutiny yan, and there's a freeze order from the court. That's something that I am assuming should be known to concerned government agencies.
So again, the question of ethics comes in, no? Kasi dapat he should have known better than to say, look, hindi naman siya pinanganak siguro kahapon na, this person is selling me 8 properties and sure, I'll buy them, right? Of course, he knows what those properties signify. He knows what those properties mean, and if he didn't, then perhaps dapat nag-due diligence siya to find out, And again, if I were a buyer and I would be buying 8 or 6 to 8 tracts of land, huge parcels of property worth several millions of pesos from a person who is in jail, okay, for a massacre, medyo, di ba, at the very least, mag-iingat ka, no?
It's government that filed that case. I think AMLAC did. And what's the point of filing that case if they are not going to safeguard what they hope to safeguard, which is basically to keep the properties frozen or maintain status quo so that there is no movement, no attempts to alienate the property, mortgage the property, hide the property under somebody's name. Definitely, that's the job of the government if it's really serious about the case that AMLAC filed.
Three years after the Maguindanao Massacre, it is only now that the public is getting a glimpse of the real extent of the fabled Ampatuan wealth. Based on the freeze order handed down by a Manila court against the Ampatuan Assets, the clan is believed to hold at least 161 land titles, mostly in the name of Andal Ampatuan Sr., Andal Jr., and Zaldi Ampatuan. All in all, the properties amount to a staggering 5 million square meters of real estate, covering Maguindanao, Cotabato City, Davao City, and even upscale Makati City. The properties are equivalent to 500 hectares, or 5 square kilometers. The figure may be a bit difficult for many Filipinos to comprehend, as many Filipinos are lucky to own 40 square meters of land. Of the 5 million square meters, half of this is under the name of Andal Ampatuan Sr. and his wife, Laila. This includes the grand mansion built by Andal Sr. in Huna subdivision, as well as a palace built along the main highway of the capital town of Sharif Aguac, that even has its own mosque inside. In terms of land area, Andal Jr. follows with more than 1 million square meters. Zaldi Ampatuan may have less land area, but he has proven to be more selective in his choices. Zaldi's properties include a large mansion along 1841 Tamarin Road in Dasmariñas Village, Makati, where he is neighbors with many foreign embassies. Zaldi used to stay here when he was in Manila, and his aides would bring documents here for his signature. Zaldi also has a condominium unit on the 21st floor of the Oriental Gardens condominium in the Makati Business District. In Huna subdivision in Davao City, Zaldi owns this mansion, which occupies a block along Calamansi Road. The property is huge and the walls are formidable. The Ampatuan mansions seem to follow a common theme. The walls are usually a shade of pink with intricate stone or tile work, and the guard towers that stand over every corner. In the case of Zaldi's mansion, there is also a closed-circuit camera. The Land Registration Authority says that while there are other corporations or entities that own larger tracts of land, the Ampatuan properties are still unusually large. How does 5.1 million square meters strike you? Is it unusually large?
It's huge. It's huge. It's huge. Kasi divided by 10,000, if mga siguro 500 ba? 500 hectares. That's big. That's big.
But is it an unusual number?
Relative Relative sa stature mo eh. There are people who owns more than that. Pero hindi ka magtataka kasi mayaman naman talaga sila. Landed sila even before they were born. Depends, relative siya eh. Depends on the owner, if he has the capacity.
The Manila courts ordered the freezing of these assets in 2011 because of a forfeiture case filed by the government's Anti-Money Laundering Council, or AMLAC. The AMLAC case is based on the lifestyle check conducted by the Ombudsman and a special probe conducted by the Commission on Audit, or the COA. The Audit Commission found some 2.5 billion pesos in anomalous transactions entered into by the autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao, then headed by Governor Zaldi Ampatuan. For its part, the Ombudsman found that most of the properties of the clan were not even listed in the asset declarations that all government officials are required to submit every year. In the last asset statement that Andal Sr. submitted in 2007, he declared a net worth of only 18.5 million pesos, including 5 real properties. His declared annual gross salary was only 600,000 pesos. But the AMLAC found a total of 48 real properties under Andal Sr.'s name. Government now says Andal Sr. undervalued his asset declaration by at least 180 million pesos. As for Zaldi, he only declared 5 real properties in Sharif Aguac and Cotabato City. But the government says he owns at least 18 properties. The lead defense lawyer of the Ampatuan says the government's estimates are way off the mark. In fact, attorney Siegfried Fortun says the Ampatuans no longer have enough cash to sustain the family's needs. Fortun added that Andal Sr.'s wife, Laila, comes from a rich landed family, and most of his properties were acquired even before he joined the government in 1987. But in the AMLAC's list, Andal Sr. only acquired most of his properties after 2001, when he became governor of Maguindanao.
He's always said that he's a farmer by profession. He always said that, I'm good with the soil. It's what I know. That's why he planted corn, he planted rice, he planted coconut.
Datu Ishak Mastura is a former regional trade secretary of the autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao when Zaldi Ampatuan was still regional governor. Mastura belongs to one of Maguindanao's old royal families, just like the Ampatuans.
But there were also stories about him grabbing lands because, he saw the value in lands. More than anything, because as a farmer, he saw the value of lands. So it was not pure land grabbing in the sense of, just occupy it and say, it's mine. He offered a price that you could not refuse.
May kasamang tawa yung you cannot refuse.
So that's how he accumulated some of those land. So now we don't know what will happen to those lands because some of them have been reoccupied by the original owners, but the titles are still in the name of Ampatuan. When he became governor, that he started really accumulating land. Maybe as mayor he did some, but not to the extent that he did as governor.
So to start, he was a farmer, and then he...
Again, because of capital. I told you, capital seeks a way wherein you can invest it so that it will be preserved. So when he became governor, he had more capital. So the system drove him to accumulate more because that's the capitalist system.
It is not only the Ampatuan clan's economic might that remains formidable, but their political influence as well. 3 years after the Maguindanao Massacre, the Ampatuans are back in politics in significant numbers. At least 72 local candidates running in the 2013 elections carry the surname or middle name Ampatuan. Interestingly, most of them are running under the alliance of Vice President Jejomar Binay or under the ruling party of President Benigno Aquino III. At least 34 Ampatuans are running under Binay's coalition, including the wife of Zaldi Ampatuan and the wife of Andal Ampatuan Jr. Also running under the opposition banner is Zahara Ampatuan, wife of Anwar Ampatuan, who is in jail for the massacre, and Ahmad Ampatuan, also in jail for the massacre. Not to be outdone, President Aquino's Liberal Party has endorsed 9 Ampatuans, including Andal Ampatuan Sr.'s half-brother, Sarip Ampatuan. The 9 are running with Liberal Party gubernatorial bet Esmael Mangudadatu, who lost his wife and sister in the massacre. Mangudadatu says he has no problems having Ampatuans in his slate, saying they do not subscribe to the patriarch's brand of politics. With all this, it becomes clear that the Ampatuans retain formidable economic and political clout, not just in the local level, but in the national arena as well. This raises some sticky questions. What would all of this mean for the future of the massacre case? The plight of the families of the victims, the future of the frozen assets, and the future of the people of Maguindanao.
He lost touch with the interest of the common man when he actually came from poverty himself. He rose up the ranks. He was also a farmer. He tilled the soil. So he should have understood right away what it meant to be downtrodden.
If there is nothing, no account, no property that could be seized in order to satisfy damages awarded by the court, this is on the assumption that we get those convictions that we want, then it's just an empty victory. It's a victory on paper but cannot be executed. Walang bayaran.